The Japanese people are so kind and they're very polite. And a huge part of their culture is saving face. So even if they totally don't understand what you're saying, they'll be like, oh, your Japanese is so good. So I feel like the more compliments I got, the more I knew I needed to work on my Japanese. But they're so nice and they'll do anything for you. We had so many instances where we were lost or we didn't know what the signs meant because we couldn't read kanji, and people would go out of their way to help us, and they would drop everything they were doing to make sure that we were okay. And so they're such a giving, such a caring community. They give a lot of gifts and expect nothing in return, and that was a huge part of their culture. Surprisingly, I didn't feel like I had a lot of culture shock when I first went to Japan, and I think it's because I expected it to be so different that it wasn't as different as I thought it would be. Coming back to America after the mission has been a lot more of a culture shock to me, but that might just depend on the person. So usually and this isn't the rule for all missionaries, but usually we would try and set up appointments like at the church or something. But I have heard other people, it's a matter of opinion. I've heard other people say like, no, absolutely get in their home if you can. If not, then try and do lessons in a member's home or something. So when you first walk in the door, there's something called a genkan, and it's like a first step, and it's lower than the other, like the main floor of the house. So there's just a little step right there, and you go in there and you have to take off your shoes, and you can't step back in the genkan before you walk on the first step. And so you take off your shoes, and you have to be wearing socks or nylons or something. Don't be barefooted. And then you turn your shoes around so they're facing the door. But while you do all of this, you can't turn your back to the host who's in the house. So sometimes that was kind of hard. We didn't eat with the members a whole lot. Like some missionaries eat with members every meal. That was definitely not the case for us. But when members did feed us, they usually fed us way too much. We're like, oh no, we're good, we're full. And they're like, oh, you have another, they have a thing called betsubara, which means you have another stomach for like dessert or something. So even when you're full, they'll feed you more. And usually we would cook at home. You have an hour every day. But like in one area, we lived in a huge area, and the trains didn't come through very often. And so if we left, it would take way too much time to go back just for dinner. So we'd usually eat at like a 7-Eleven or a store around there. 7-Elevens have safe food. It's not quite like 7-Elevens in America. They have fresh food. They are so clean. Japan is such a clean country. One of the things that I thought was so funny is that it's really hard to find garbage cans in Japan. Like, you just don't see garbage cans, but there's no garbage on the street. So you have to take your garbage with you and throw it away at home eventually. Water is fine. You can drink water from a tap and it's okay. There aren't a lot of drinking fountains in Japan, but they have vending machines everywhere. Just on the side of the road, like anywhere you can find a vending machine. For groceries, it depends on your companion, and you can work this out with your companion, but with me, usually when we had an apartment with 4 sisters, then we would just like switch off with the other sisters who would buy groceries one week and who would buy the other week. But sometimes sisters don't like the food you choose, so they can buy their own food. But shopping tips, make sure you buy fruits and vegetables, which are kind of expensive in Japan, but it's worth it. You need to stay healthy, and you need the vitamins and minerals that vegetables and fruits will give you. Don't spend your money on junk food. It's not good for you. Yeah. Usually we would just go to the grocery store. Sometimes by the train stations, then they'll sell fresh produce grown locally if it's like during the summer, or if like peaches are in season, and then it's really good to buy those there. You ride bikes every day. If you're going like long distances, then you take the train usually, but other than that, you ride a bike every day. Some days we don't ride the train at all. Some days, like in one area I lived in, we lived kind of far from the mission home, and so it would take like 3 or 4 hours to get to the mission home, and we'd have to go there for conferences, stuff. But that was probably the longest I ever had to be on the train, like 3 or 4 hours.